Picture this for a moment. You're a new player exploring the beautiful world of Elden Ring for the first time. In your exploration, you wander a little too far to the east. You find yourself here. This is Caelid. Despite being deceptively close to the starter area of Elden Ring, Caelid does not forgive new players. It tests the resolve of any pilgrim who mistakenly wanders into its mouth, and does not hesitate to bite down hard. Each moment of existence in Caelid is grueling and mean, and the blood-red skies seem to taunt the player, sneering. We warned you not to come here, and yet, you persist. The name Caelid even mocks its own identity, translating to the heavens, when the sickly, desolate land clearly resembles hell. When compared to the lush foliage of Limgrave or the billowing fog of Liurnia, there is nothing redeeming about Caelid. It is a tragic testimony of rot. And yet, it is my favorite region in the game. There is no denying Caelid is a broken place. The surface of the region has been rendered barren by an affliction known as scarlet rot. Scarlet rot is a fungal infection that has all but consumed both the environment and the creatures there. Dogs stricken with scarlet rot become desperate, ravenous beasts. Humans exposed to the disease become walking corpses, barreling at the player and exploding with no concern for their own well-being. The description for these enemies reads, "These tormented souls have little fight in them, often shambling toward opponents. These corpses will sometimes run toward opponents and explode in a desperation, dealing damage and coating the area with their putrefied remains." Caelid's inhabitants frequently become consumed by a desperate frenzy, seeking to annihilate their enemies no matter the physical consequences. The scarlet rot gnaws at their personhood, condemning them to endless suffering and causing death to seem sweet in comparison to agonizing life. And life in Caelid is agonizing. The earth itself testifies to that. While I was exploring the depths of Caelid, I heard an alarming noise. Quiet, labored breathing echoed in my ears. Frightened by the possibility of an enemy, I whipped around, searching for the source of the breaths. No adversary stood in my vicinity. I scanned the landscape, adamant on discovering the hidden enemy that had to be lurking behind cover. I found nothing. It was no enemy, taking in heavy breaths like a wounded creature. It was Caelid. The land itself was shuddering under the weight of its sorrows. This encounter reminded me of Romans 8, verse 22. We know that the whole creation has been groaning, as in the pains of childbirth, right up to the present time. Caelid is a wounded land, scourged by the pangs of labor as it is twisted into a disfigured image of itself. It was never meant to look like this. This ambient breathing caused Caelid to seem alive, with everything from the tortured souls to the crust of the earth heaving a collective breath of hopelessness. Despite the tangible pain of the land, it is not beyond saving. When I discovered the Caelid ruins, ironically translating to Heaven Ruins, I experienced a moment that redefined my view on Caelid. Scattered throughout the Caelid ruins are bonfires, where walking corpses emerge and attempt to kill the player. Above the fire, smoldering butterflies circle the dancing flames, unfazed by the chaos around them. I had cleared the enemies in these ruins and was finally able to admire the crumbling walls and ever-roaring bonfires in peace. At that moment, while the crimson sky screamed its warnings and the earth itself released a raspy exhale, it began to rain. Despite everything, the world does not give up on Caelid. The atmosphere sends the same water down on the fields of Limgrave as it does to ravaged Caelid. It is not like anything can grow in the infected dirt, but it rains nonetheless. While I watched the rain fall upon the barren hellscape, I remembered a quote from the podcast Welcome to Night Vale. The desert seems vast, even endless. And yet, scientists tell us that somewhere, even now, there is snow. Caelid is not hopeless. Although it is undeniably suffering, and the world is burning, and the people decay from scarlet rot, even now, there is rain. Although the land desperately needs help, when the Tarnished stretches out their hand, Caelid draws blood. While the player inspects the region, searching for a diagnosis, every malformed creature in the area seeks to chase him out. The rotting dogs near the entrance of Caelid herd the player back into Limgrave. The player can contract scarlet rot from enemy attacks, which drains their health far faster than poison. As the player navigates the brutality of sickly forests and lakes filled with blood, they gradually come to a conclusion. Caelid wants to get rid of you. Caelid wants you dead. This personified hatred of a location reminds me of the game Anatomy, where the player explores a house that becomes more convoluted and unwelcoming with time. As they search through the rooms, unlocking doors and invading the hallways, the house expresses its hatred for their intrusion. The game's dialogue reads, "There is an important distinction that must be drawn between the words dissection and vivisection. A distinction that would appear to be lost on you. Your purpose was to listen, and yet at every turn you have pried, you have prodded, and you have interfered. Have you not been paying attention? Did it not occur to you that as an organism existing within a greater organism, your intrusion would be felt? And still you harass. And now, like the wayward spider who witlessly settled on a sleeper's tongue, you will be swallowed." Like the house in Anatomy, Caelid is hurting. Although it is sick and desperately needs a cure, it does not want the player to get close. Caelid sees the player's actions as a vivisection, which is defined by the Random House Dictionary as the action of cutting into or dissecting a living body. To Caelid, the player's entrance is an unwanted incision, despite being for the purpose of discovering a cure. Under the threat of the scalpel, the land launches itself into a panicked frenzy, sending rotting dogs to chase away the intruder. And yet, you keep coming back. As the Tarnished, you return to the area that blatantly wants you dead. Against all odds, the Tarnished does not give up on Caelid. In fact, neither does the Erd Tree. In Elden Ring, the Erd Tree is a colossal glowing tree that represents the Greater Will, or the god of that world. Scattered throughout the world are smaller trees known as minor Erd trees. One of these divine trees grows in northwest Caelid. A sacred tree. In Caelid. The god of this world does not shy away from brokenness. The Greater Will is not deaf to the pain of its people. In fact, the Greater Will leads the Tarnished through Caelid by the means of sites of grace. These glowing remnants of grace, while serving as a checkpoint mechanic, also represent the grace of the Erd Tree. Through these sites, the Erd Tree guides individuals worthy of becoming the Elden Lord, directing them toward the next step on their journey. The Erd Tree believes that Caelid is worth entering. If the Erd Tree did not perceive Caelid as a land with value, why are there periodic sites of grace? Enya, a finger reader in the Round Table Hold, speaks to this question. Across the realm, life lies in ruin, fallen to pieces. Foul curses and misery spread, unabating. But the Greater Will has not abandoned the realm, nor the life that inhabits it. So it is that the Tarnished are guided by grace. The god of this world has not forgotten Caelid. Although the suffering of this land seems vast, even endless, even here, there is grace. So, why Caelid? Why do I prefer the rotting brutality of Caelid when gorgeous landscapes like Limgrave exist? The biggest reason is that I recognize that same brokenness in my own body. I am intimately familiar with that decay. As someone who has struggled with a chronic illness for my entire life, I understand the agonizing awareness that it was never meant to be like this. I know why Caelid pushes away the hand of the doctor, cynical about a potential cure. It is difficult to relate to the perfectly intact Limgrave, but when Caelid sighs, I exhale in concert. It is refreshing to experience a location that is so emotionally raw, one that doesn't mask its pain. And yet, it is also hopeful to know that despite all of this suffering, Caelid is not forgotten. The greater will does not decide that Caelid is too much to handle and leaves it to rot. No, it sends the Erdtree to grow in the soil of its wounded people. The greater will leaves remnants of grace in a broken land, telling the tarnished, "This place is valuable to me. Stop by on your journey and know that I have not forgotten your cries. I see your pain, and want you to know that even here, there is grace. There is hope. There is a cure to this rot. Despite everything, it rains in Caelid."